Hey, Hockey World, how's it hanging? What's going on? What have you been doing? Hopefully, you've been out and about, and going to parties and having fun with different people and seeing things. And
actually, not Eck.
I know.
Russ, do we have a pre-show?
Is it possible? Before we do that, is it possible? Yeah. Is it possible that, like, when this is all said and done, that we're going to create a group of people that are just absolutely lazy, just like.
You think this is what's going to do it? You don't think that's
I know. I've watching Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert was really funny. He's like, we were made for this, America. We were made. This is our game.
Right.
We know how to sit there and binge watch things all day. We know how to do nothing. We're better than any country in the world. This is our job.
Well, if they're worried about morbid obesity, it's going to be worse after this, because it's like I was going to the gym 5 days a week, and now it's like I feel like I had never gone to the gym, and now you know, I definitely want to go back, but I'm set myself back a year the way things feel right now.
That part's rough.
You're either going to be drunk or a great chef. I heard it's one of the two things you're going to be.
I have not increased my alcohol consumption; it's stayed the same.
Yeah,
which isn't that much.
Right.
Definitely cooking more than ever before.
Yeah, I'm definitely cooking. I mean, I'm baking. I've never baked.
That's for sure.
I'm baking muffins. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that you can't beat, right?
No, it's a good byproduct of it.
But you know it's bad. I heard an interview yesterday with Morgan Rielly from the Leafs, and half the questions were about what movies he's watching, what TV shows he's watching. What are you doing? Are you cooking more? I mean, these are the things I'm least interested in. I want to know about like his season. I want to know about what his thoughts on what the playoff system is going to be. It's like, and I mean, I don't blame my
call him up and get him to talk to you.
Yeah, there you go.
I do have a quick pre-show.
That was the pre-show, by the way.
Hopefully, this doesn't happen in the NHL, but Major League Baseball has basically said that if they want to, with this new agreement that they just drew up with extending everybody's service time, they could have the draft only be 5 rounds this year, and next year only 20 instead of 40. Wow. And if you think about the impact that will have on young ball players, and I did interview one that I'm going to probably put up on Sportsology next week, the impact on that is staggering, because especially if you have no more years left of eligibility to play in college, like if you were in college. If you're going out of high school and you didn't plan on going to college, now you have to plan on going to college. If you're not a bonus baby and you're not getting signed within the first 3 rounds and getting a huge bonus, you don't even know where you're going to stand in a year or two. And they haven't had a season, and then they're talking about cutting the minor league teams. Like, I don't understand what Rob Manfred's doing here. Major League Baseball makes enough money, but at the end of the day, if they really feel like the NCAA is going to be their big feeder system, they're going to be sorely mistaken.
Well, I want to get Kevin's thoughts on this, because I heard yesterday that the plan right now is for a 100-game regular season starting July 1st with 1 to 2 double headers every week. And first of all, I don't know whether there's going to be a feeder system, a minor league system to feed players to the major leagues.
I don't think there will be. I don't think there'll be a minor league season.
So right now, I would think that, Kev, they're probably going to have 40-man rosters. Otherwise, they're going to have to, they're not going to have pitchers that are going to be able to step in case other guys get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, or they've got to make sure and pay the freight for, at least with TripleA. And, I mean, I think that's the more likely scenario, that everybody will fuel and feed their AAA team. So you're essentially working with 52 players.
Right.
But sometimes that's not enough. That's the issue. Right. How many times do you end up with 5 or 6 injuries at your major league level, and then the AAA level you lose 3 or 4, and then suddenly guys are getting promoted from AA, and everybody's sort of moving up. So it's the arms that are going to be the problem, right?
Yeah, right. It's always going to be the pitching.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 52 players probably would be enough to get you through for hitters, because even with the amount of injuries. But who knows? What if you run out? Are you going to call it in April? But the minor league system in baseball has been problematic for a while. And how long have we heard that teams are in danger of being folded and the whole thing could collapse? And I've seen studies, which is always an indication of how seriously they are considering dumping teams, about the percentage of players that make it to the majors who start out in the pro ranks, and it's ridiculous. Just because you're picking guys in the 30th round and the 27th.
But what do you think about the NCAA being their feeder system? That's pretty much what they're counting on.
Well, I think what will end up happening is you'll see more guys. Like there's always going to be minor league baseball, but what you're going to have is these guys. I mean, what we'll see is, don't you think, the eradication of the late bloomer, because that person is not going to find a job.
Right. They're going to just give up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, the premium players will, start out trying to, probably every team will have 3 teams eventually.
Yeah. I have a weird feeling they're going to eliminate the entire, say, AA level. It's going to go from A and rookie ball to TripleA, and then something like that, because they can't. It has to be uniform. It can't be like, we'll drop an A team, we'll drop. It has to be across the board, and I bet you anything it's going to be AA.
Well, and what's amazing is usually your best prospects are AA.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you got people who are on their way down that end up in AAA, so they like to put all the younger players at AA.
Right.
And you're right, they got to have rookie league, because there has to be sort of like a tryout.
Yeah, right after you draft them, they have to go somewhere.
You got to try. Yeah, you got to have a tryout. You got to see what they look like in a pro environment. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens. But the bigger issue, and it's going to be true in hockey, is okay. So, we can't just turn off this faucet like everybody is projecting. So, how comfortable are you going to be sliding into a church pew or a ball game seat or an arena seat when 3 weeks before we're all sheltering in place because we're afraid that every person we see has the virus?
I'll tell you the answer to it, and then nobody's going to like it on the panel, but I saw a Bill Gates interview, and Bill Gates' answer was, that'll happen when everybody gets a vaccination, and then everybody knows they're safe. So even though he didn't come up with it, he was basically saying, I can't see sports with fans.
Everybody gets a vaccination, or everybody gets it. Because
either way.
I heard a doctor on CNN this morning and said, well, you know what ended the Spanish flu in 1920? Everybody got it.
Yeah.
The people
it wasn't quite that simple, but yeah. Oh, yeah, I get that. I mean, it's the herd argument. And but I think what'll happen is just what we saw 2 weeks ago. You'll see, the people who went to the beaches in Florida, they'll go to games. They're invincible. We all know it. And blah blah blah. And they'll go to games. But people my age, I just heard a story yesterday. I'm actually going to write a column about this for Hockey Buzz this weekend, about this very subject, about how willing are we going to be to go to games. And I talked to someone, within the hockey community, who said one of his friends is a season ticket holder for the Chicago Blackhawks. And, they called and just wanted to know what, he was thinking about for next season. And he goes, are you going to, want tickets for next season? He goes, who's sitting next to me?
Yeah.
That was his question.
That's a very interesting question.
Yeah. So, and obviously he's going to buy the tickets, but it was a real sort of interesting, kind of concept. And so what I think has happened is we'll have younger people, and then there are, some people who think it'll be a badge of courage if you go to games, and then there'll be people like me who are over 60 and say, is the risk worth the reward when I can watch it on TV? Like, I love sports, but I love it on TV.
I do have Blackhawks news too when we start up.
Well, one more quick thing.
Yeah.
And Russ and I were just talking about this in jest this morning. I think places like, a restaurant like Golden Corral is not going to have the chocolate fountain that everybody goes like.
Thank God, I wouldn't go near that.
The Golden Corral hit on the by this is definitely the story.
Yeah,
I hate the chocolate fountain.
Advertiser act. But I mean,
you're right.
I thought it was disgusting before this, but can you imagine anybody going to and sticking something, like some piece of fruit or whatever under this fountain of disease,
Of bacteria. Yeah.
it's like no. People may have been willing to do that and just throw caution.
There was a time in this country where salad bars were considered awful, like disgusting. And remember,
there are people still do consider them awful.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's in any kind of salad bar type thing like that is definitely going to die. Like we have a great Chinese restaurant near us, like a Chinese buffet that's like enormous, that kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff you just like.
The Horn and Harder would make a comeback because you're not dealing with anybody. You put your change in, and the sandwich comes out. That's actually still okay.
Well, here's what another interesting thing too, and I've seen this discussed on social media, but not to the length it did before. If you remember 9/11, there was a lot of discussion about when it was okay to joke again,
right? Yeah.
About all that, and I've found that we've had no. The qualms are not there about this. Like I'm in the vast majority of, I don't make light of this. I don't joke about it. I don't, and not in funny terms and whatsoever. Yeah. But I have found for the most part, people are very comfortable joking around. I don't know if it's gallows humor or what.
I think you could do a quarantine joke and just leave it at that. Like you personally, like I've joked about myself being quarantined, but that's it.
Yeah,
I think people always turn to humor in really difficult times. I think that's a normal thing.
But they didn't in 9/11.
No, but it's different when you're attacked by someone else. Like this, the thing that's different about this is we're not being attacked by someone. Like there's not an enemy that we can look at, besides ourselves. Like so, really, it's just.
Well, you're absolutely right about that, and I think that's one of the issues of why it'll be a little bit harder than it was, because people want to compare this to the fact that the NHL came back after their lockout, so strong, and all of sports came back from 9/11. But the difference is, like, when you were going to an arena after 9/11, you could convince yourself, hey, look, my own vigilance will help me. Right. I'll keep my eyes open. If I see something, I'll say something.
And everybody had that attitude after 9/11.
Yeah. We're looking around, we're watching, we're looking at people in large backpacks. We were doing all that.
Yeah.
But this, there's nothing to look for.
Right. And because of that, I think people just eventually you either have to turn to humor or people just get really depressed. I think that there's just a matter of like humor keeps you from being totally crazy about it. Like if you can laugh about it, if the whole concept of if you can at least laugh at something, you can get through it. Like even people who have cancer, I've been with families who have, you think that you go visit them and they're like, one woman who was on our a mother on our soccer team, we were all bringing meals to them, every couple of days. We had different people on the team bringing meals. You go there and you would expect they go, oh man, we're so sorry for what's happened. They were all just laughing. They were joking around.
Well, social distancing is nothing new to me. Women have been practicing that with me for 2 decades.
That's a good coronavirus joke right there.
There you go.
All right, ready? Let's go.
Let's go.
All right, it's May. It's May. It's not.
Oh, it's May. I wish.
I know. I'm just kidding. Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, April 3rd. Do the days of the week even matter? Do I have to say them anymore? Hi, everybody.
If you feel like it.
It's April 3rd, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Colin from Sportsology.
Are you sure? I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm in an undisclosed location.
I was laughing at Mike.
Undisclosed location. Somewhere hunkered down in the state of Michigan.
In a bunker somewhere with...
really has like a real, it's hilarious. A Unabomber feel to that. Yep.
Yeah.
When you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com, this is the podcast comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we have some hockey news today. We're going to have some fun finding out what kind of hockey person Kevin is and in our hockey, what kind of hockey person are you quiz that we've been giving to people. Yeah. So we have to go to Dennis Maruk. I wanted to give Dennis Maruk, but he got cut off the other day.
And we're endeavoring to get Tom Laidlaw, but he's having some issues, so maybe we'll push him to next week.
Yeah, let's bump Tom Laidlaw.
Yeah, I'm not trying to bump him. He's just having issues trying to get on the show.
If he can get on, that's great.
Yep,
he's awesome. So let's start with what hockey news we have. Rush, you had something you wanted to start?
Yeah, so some Blackhawks news. So they signed Evan Barrett out of Penn State. He's actually from Bristol, PA. He's a local kid.
Yeah,
and really good player. Like this guy's fast. He's smart. He wins faceoffs. He's a playmaker. I think his ceiling could be a second line center, but he's probably a third line center. And so this is the kind of guy that the Blackhawks need to sort of get in their system, let him start down with Rockford, and then, in a couple of years or in a year, call him up, and those are the kinds of guys that can help them with the salary cap issue. So that's a real good signing. And like I said, he's really good on faceoff. So that's something where I think the Blackhawks need help too. So at some point we'll see him. The negative, well, and they also signed a Russian kid who I know nothing about. I'll probably get something about him on Monday. Andrei Altupamakin. I don't know anything about him.
Nice name.
Yeah, it's hard to spell. Trust me. But I'll get more on him on Monday.
You're right.
Yeah, I didn't have anything handy on him. But the other one, Ryan Shea, I do, and he's the captain of Northeastern. He's won the Beanpot like 3 times. Actually, he's pretty much a cut up in interviews. He's really this last Beanpot. He was great. He's mature. He's a great leader. He's a really good skater. He has offensive ability, and he definitely could play the power play. I would say like the second power play. And he basically didn't choose the Blackhawks because they have too many defensemen, and that's a problem for them because they don't have the right defensemen. And see, when you start filling the roster with guys like that, and then a college guy looks at it and says, you got all these guys signed, where's room for me? Now, he's a 23-year-old guy. So if he played, a little while in the AHL and looks good, you call him right up.
Yeah.
They don't have a spot for him, right? And he doesn't, well, they might if he looks good, but he doesn't want to go there because he doesn't see a spot for him. And this is the problem with the way the Blackhawks are with being close to the cap and also having signed some guys and have some contracts they can't get rid of. This is the negative part of that.
Well, Kev, at least I've noticed in the last few days, a lot of players are scurrying to get signed on their entry level deals or like college free agents because there's a little uncertainty there. I know that the league signed a 4th round pick from a couple years ago. Now, normally the deadline is June the 1st, but because everything is in limbo right now, we don't know whether the deadline is June the 1st or it's going to be further forward, like before the draft, if the draft is being held in September. So that uncertainty, I think, is leading to some of these players saying, let me just get a contract and let me get started.
Yeah, I think for some people, certainly that makes sense, just because of the uncertainty. And you know what? Those deals often come with even lesser players get some sort of token signing bonus, and everybody needs a little cash right now. So
yeah. And Shea is the first one to buck that trend that we had seen and say, yeah, I'm going to go to August 15th. So now I kind of wonder if a few more guys out there are going to announce that too, because I think once the first one does it, then I think others might do it too. So it's an interesting thing right now because, yeah, he's a senior, so he was going to either sign or not. There are other guys too, like the Sharks basically said they're not done. And Doug Wilson came out yesterday and said they're looking at other guys. And that's what Tim Burke told me too. Like that's why I always said, I tweeted like a year ago that I felt like more players were going to come over from Russia. And this is before I knew about any salary cap thing. And they are. And they're starting to trickle down now. And if you want to add some, extra skill to your lineup and get them in there cheaply, it's the best way to do it. It's not always going to work out, but it'll work out to a point where at least you're filling a roster spot with a pro player.
Now,
Russ, let me ask a question on that because this is something I talked about on another podcast, but I don't know the answer to this. I mean, clearly, the Russian players coming over from the KHL, I think we'd all have to agree that there's been sort of a disappointment in terms of the caliber of player that comes out of the KHL. If you look at some of the top players over there, and obviously some do come over and contribute, but there have been a lot of players who have been signed and they've played very well over there and they've come across the pond to play here and they haven't had the same impact. The Vegas Golden Knights, I bet, are not excited about bringing over KHL players.
Yeah, right. They've had their issues.
No, but and I think that was an example of one that I think they both bungled it. I think the Knights and the player kind of bungled that together. And it wasn't a good fit. I felt like the New Jersey signing, what's his name again?
Gusev.
Yeah, Gusev, he was good. Was he great? No, but he was good. Yeah. I think if you get at least –
you just, what I'm saying is that we have high expectations for these guys, and they're coming over and just being okay.
I think the expectations need to be lower because unless you're a Kaprizov where clearly scoring 40 goals or something.
Right.
You could score 25 goals in the KHL and never score 25 in the NHL. That's clear.
The last big superstar was Panarin. So.
Right.
Yeah. No. I mean, well, that's my only point.
Yeah. But
we expected a lot out of these KHL players.
Yeah, you're right about that, Kev. The answer for me is don't spend too much on them. If you can negotiate a deal that is less than going out on the free agent market, then you do it.
Well, I mean, that's the point right now with a lot of these players, because let's say, for example, Barabanov, the one who's been talked about the last week or so, he's coming over. It's a 1 year deal. It's an ELC, and then he gets to go RFA, and then he gets paid.
Right.
But it's a prove it deal. I mean, the only thing he gets above and beyond the normal ELC is bonuses. I mean, Zaitsev a few years ago, Mikheyev is with the Leafs has been a pretty good success. He's not a star player, but he's second, third line.
He showed really well, actually.
Right. So, I mean, you can find players, but I think the main attraction here with some of these Russian players is, especially if they're under the age of 25, they come over on a 1 or 2 year ELC, and you don't have to spend a ton of money. And then after they prove themselves, after what they can do in the NHL, then you pay the money. It's a big risk if it's somebody over the age of 25, like Panarin was, I believe, that they, because I'm pretty sure Chicago had to pay him more than the normal money.
Yeah, something about Panarin, just so we all understand it. I know it's very easy to say, well, how did everybody miss on Panarin? Because every team missed on Panarin, right? Except for the Blackhawks. I went through and talked about it with somebody from an NHL team, and it was interesting because I was at that World Juniors. It was in Buffalo.
Yep.
We saw Russia come back. We saw them beat Canada. He did score a goal or two in that last game, but he was a fourth liner, and he was thought about as a fourth liner, and not many took it seriously, like, hey, this guy's going to do this all the time. It was more like, okay, we're still focused on the other guys, the Tarasenkos and such, and Kuznetsovs, and it's like, yeah, that's how he got missed, because those other names shone brighter than he did, and they got a bargain out of it.
Well, I mean, I'm also seeing like a result of a change in the level of the Russian young hockey organization. I think we're also, over the years, say what you want about the downsides of communism, and there are plenty of them, but they sure could put together hockey players back then. They had, it's a different world. The money in Russia is bad. The economy's been bad in Russia. You've got a lot of, I think they're trying to develop superstar players, but they're taking their guesses on who they're going to develop as well, at a young age.
Right.
And, I think that has to be taken into effect at some point. That has to matter.
But just to defend NHL teams, Panarin had 5 games in the KHL before his draft eligible year, so there really wasn't a lot of. I'm sure
the World Juniors. You had to see him in the World Juniors, and
when you saw him in the World Juniors, even when he played minimally, you could tell he was something. But at the same time,
tell he was something. But you really couldn't.
What can you say? Right? It's one. It's a. I don't know.
Yeah, it's one series. You couldn't tell that he was that guy.
It's easy to say. It's easy to blame the NHL for that. But at the same time,
what's interesting about the World Junior is it really has been a good barometer, certainly. But that doesn't mean that everybody who plays well there is going to be an NHL player, and that's one of the that's why they've got to sort it all out.
We go back to Justin Pogge, the chef who was the Leafs goalie. Like, he's a perfect example. He was unbeatable in the World Juniors. Now, it was interesting because when I covered when he won, the feeling was, he's a really good goalie, but you could see he was on a star team, and that definitely helped him. But still, I thought he was going to be a decent goalie, and it just didn't work out for him.
Yeah, the point I always think about is because usually the highest scoring players and the top players there, the guys who dominate, end up being the top players in the NHL. We've seen many examples of that through the years, but Patrick Eaves was a dominant player at the World Junior Championships, and he was a real dependable.
Decent NHLer,
third line guy.
But that's right. He was not a top line player.
Solid third liner.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues that that's why these guys get paid big money, because they got to make that determination.
Right. Like, I'll give you an example. Scott Laughton had a great under-18s, and the Flyers I was told, pretty much drafted him on that. And he is a good NHLer, but they took him something like 15th overall, something like that. He's not that player, but he's a good NHLer. He's actually having his best year this year, but you wouldn't look at Scott Laughton and say, if you had a chance to redo it, you wouldn't draft him with the same pick, whether it was 15, 18, I forget, but you wouldn't do it with that. But he had one great tournament, and it was right before the draft. And it's like, you know what? That can do it.
All right, I want to take everybody back in time a little bit now.
This may one point about Laughton, and then we'll go to that.
All right, continue. Go ahead.
What's interesting about Laughton in my mind is he's one of those rare players whose value is greater than the sum of his parts.
Yes.
Like, it's amazing to me when you talk to people around the league of how valued he is around the league by other general managers. Like, people are very interested in what he does. And they don't see him as a star player.
At his current salary, too, if you were making a big salary.
That's right. That's
fascinating.
But I think every team would love to have Laughton.
I agree.
Just for what he does. So anyway, carry on, Eklund. I'm sorry.
No, I totally agree. All right, so I'm old. Okay, granted, I'm old, and Kevin's older than me, and so is Russ. Actually, I'm the youngest person here, but I'm old still. And
whatever that's worth.
Podcast, yeah.
All right, so so I'm the young kid here, but I still I'm young enough to remember the late 70s and 80s. When I was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And something that the NHL did then that I look forward to probably as much as I look forward to like the Peter Puck specials on NBC.
And this was this is the same era, and they were both Hockey Night in Canada.
This is the same era. They were both Hockey Night in Canada, and they both were taken on by NBC as well when NBC finally started showing games in the 80s. And that was a little thing called the NHL Showdown. All right. And the NHL Showdown, I've since then I've met players who've gone on to be scouts, and I've had dinners with them and media meals and talking. And whenever I'm with somebody who I remember seeing on the NHL Showdown, I always ask them about it because as a kid, I looked forward to it as much as the games. Like I thought it was such a cool thing, and what it was basically the skills competition that we see now at the NHL AllStar Game. But it was one-on-one players, just like one skill. There was a defensive one, there was an offensive one, there was a goalie one, but the thing about that time is this is like 20 years before we had skills competitions. And this is, well, maybe not 20 years because I think the skills competition started in like the early 90s.
This was late 70s.
All right. So yes, this is at least 10 years before the skills competition. And also back when you never saw guys take shootouts because there was no shootout. And in order to get a penalty shot, you had to like kill somebody. It happened like once or twice a year that we saw penalty shots at all, right? So we never saw these things. And so to actually see these guys compete like this was awesome and fascinating at the time. And I'm going to show you a little bit of one here so you can get
I was older than you. I didn't feel the same way. I was just like, eh.
Really? All right. Well, let me show you. This is a little bit. This is Gretzky.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah, Mike. I thought I would do a Gretzky one. So because Mike loves reading Gretzky so much. So this is like just playing a little bit of this. This is like the good old days here. So this is Wayne Gretzky.
Well, Gary Dornhofer, we've got some great talent in our Champion of Champions series. For example, Mike Bossy, the Wingers champion. He has great God-given talent of putting the puck in the net. He has to do well in shooting and breakaway drills to be the overall champion. How about this man, Robbie Fatorik of Quebec?
Boy, he was beloved around the league.
Where's his sweater?
Reed Larson, the defenseman champion. Well, Reed has all the skills. His main weapon, of course, being his great snapshot from the slot area.
Look at the mobility of Don Edwards there.
19-year-old Wayne Gretzky, the sophomore.
The 19-year-old Wayne Gretzky.
Well, Wayne is a prolific goal scorer with his natural.
I want to tell you that Reed Larson shot took about 3.5 seconds. He couldn't survive in the league now.
All right, so this is what it was, and all right, it was a blast. Okay, so this was Showdown. This was a product of CBC and Hockey Night in Canada, and it was done in the U.S. as well. I think it was done separately. I think the U.S. did their own version of it.
I don't think so. But
no, I think it was the same.
It was the same.
I don't know. I mean, I thought I remembered NBC's challenge.
No, because I remember that announcer, and I remember Dornhofer, obviously.
That was Brian.
Let the NBC have it, and
that was Brian McFarlane.
Yeah.
You have no concept of how awesome this was. Like for me, like I know you're saying you didn't like it, Russ. What was your opinion on it?
It was okay. It was like, eh.
You like it? Were you up?
That's how I was about it. And to be honest, even though I'm a hockey guy, like the series home run derby.
Yes.
He is far more.
So much better.
Yeah, like that was, and they had the interviews with the guys, and the interviews were awful. But
I want to say even the announcer was smoking at times, right, Kev?
Yeah. And what was it? And I think it was probably sponsored by like
a cigarette company,
or Chesterfields. Yeah,
I'll give up. And the romance of that was far greater. Like the hockey one to me seemed, to be honest, a little hokey. It was just the presentation of it seemed hokey. Where the home run derby, man, it was, and the other thing is the origin of the home run derby. It actually, I think, was 1960 when it first came out, and I was only 4, so I don't remember it then. I remember reruns at the time, but I think that just the kind of people just didn't know much about stars back then.
Right.
So
True.
like to get these guys to kind of talk about their
the interviews were really good. You're right. I saw them on reruns, and I was even interested in the interviews.
Yeah, they weren't great, but the fact that you had the guy in a relaxed setting,
right?
Yeah,
and you didn't, like they didn't ask probing questions, but they
no,
were.
But me as a National League fan, I didn't hear much about Harmon Killebrew, right? So
yeah, I was
interested.
Yeah, it was.
I distinctly remember like one. It was like Duke Snyder versus Mickey Mantle.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And they were friendly because they were both center fielders in the New York area. But this was after the Dodgers had moved to California. So, but there wasn't a lot of pressure.
No, but I feel bad now. We've trampled on Extreme.
Well, that's what I want to say that too. I want him to kind
of. I'm going to say buzzer. I was trying to come up with a buzzer on my phone to say no more baseball talk. All right, here we go.
but
I get it. I mean, I get the home run derby, but that this was. I mean, okay, you got to go back to the 1980s for me at least. I'm gonna paint the picture. Okay, so the Philadelphia Flyers were my team at home. I'd never been to a game yet. The first game I went to was like 1982, but I wanted to go to an actual game, and going to an actual game would have been an incredible thing. So the Flyers were also not on television when they were at home, which was true with most teams, right? So you would only see.
No, that's not true. Actually, I know it was true in the Chicago market, but New York WOR had games.
In the late 70s, I thought most teams at home.
No. WOR. I didn't go to games in the late. I didn't go until the late 70s.
Were the Red Wings at home, Kevin, back then?
What now?
Were the Red Wings on television when they were at home in the 70s?
Yes.
They were. Okay, well, the Flyers were definitely not. Okay, until
New York was too.
Until the invention of,
but not regularly. Like you didn't have all 82 games.
No, you didn't get all.
Yeah, okay, so not every game was on. So for the only time I would see the Flyers in their white uniforms was if I was somehow to manage to get WOR somehow streaming, which was Channel 9, which I could get if I
streaming. You weren't streaming.
Well, streaming. I mean, streaming in the 1970s was hanging a coat hanger out my bedroom window.
Exactly.
You got Polaroids coming down a stream. Right. That's how
putting on the UHF and moving the antenna.
So trying to get Channel 9 with my my hand out the window like this, back in New Jersey, 60 or 90 miles away from it. Yep. So and I would see mostly, nothing. There's nothing worse than watching hockey on a snowy television because it was like already on white ice. You couldn't see anything. So I wanted to see more hockey than I could see, right? And I wanted to make sure that I wanted to be there, and I wanted to know these players better. Like I remember one specifically and I found this on YouTube. Last night I went down a rat hole, on YouTube with these showdowns, and I was like, I wanted to see as many as I could. There was one that was Boria Salming versus Lapointe of the Canadiens, Guy Lapointe, and this was like the final. This was the final defenseman thing. It was all set up, and what they basically had was not too dissimilar to what we've seen, with the thing where the guys skate like the Patrick Kane thing where he skates out and stick handles through the little cones and then goes around. And that was what the defenseman had. The defenseman had this little skills thing where they skated around in circles and they did flips and they went that way. And there was no shooting involved. It was just like all these foot skills and stuff like that.
Right.
And it was all build up and build up and build up. And I remember watching this live and I remember being so psyched. I remember getting him. I'm like, I'm going to watch this Guy Lapointe versus Boria Salming final. And Lapointe fell down right away. like he took 2 skates out and fell flat on his butt and slid to the blue line on his butt backwards. And, Salming won the whole thing. And it was big letdown. But it was also and Lapointe was incredibly skilled defenseman.
I think the one thing that you showed us here was when you watch Wayne Gretzky, he could definitely play today. When you watch Robbie Ftorek, he couldn't play today. You watch Reed Larson, he'd have to go back and practice his shot. That thing took too long to get off his stick.
Yeah, it was like us trying to take a wrist shot. Like you get the puck, you drag it. I know. So, but to me, this was like such an incredible thing to see these guys also like just it with just like see them laughing and talking to each other.
But that was we're talking about in an era where the All-Star Game in any sport was an event where you got to see players that you didn't see. I mean, I remember Russ, was it 79 All-Star Game at the Kingdome in Seattle that Parker threw that unbelievable ball from the right field fence?
The one that sailed forever.
Right. I mean,
again, baseball.
Right, we're not right, but okay, the
give me a good All-Star Game memory.
The All-Star Game, Gordie Howe and Gretzky at
Gretzky scoring 5 goals on Pelle Lindbergh in the first period of the one game. I remember that one.
Right. I mean, but I'm saying they were memorable because those players you didn't see all the time. I mean, I was lucky.
Yeah, NBC showed those games. I watched all those All-Star games.
I was lucky in the early 80s when we had cable in Buffalo that I got to see the Sabres games, but I also got to see Bruins games out of Boston, Rangers and Islanders games out of New York, Leaf games, and there was one other team that we got occasionally. So I got more hockey than most people did. But the problem is that Showdown now, because we know these players, because we see them all the time with the NHL Center Ice package, I don't think anybody would be interested in it. I really don't.
Would they in May? Like, I'm just throwing this out there. Let's say we can get to May, okay, and we're still not, things are better, but we're still like, we're not going anywhere in May. Let's just like the end of April is a joke. Let's say the end of May is even a joke. But let's say at some point, could you not get 10 hockey players together in a building without fans and the NHL film something like this?
I think you could, but I think people would get bored.
Yeah, that's what I think. The only comparison I would have is remember when we had the lockout and they played those 3-on-3 tournaments.
Yeah,
it felt gimmicky, and even though we were starved for competition, it really didn't work. And what's really changed all that in my mind is money. The All-Star games, used to be competitive because, it was worth the players' time because there was some cash involved, to compete in these and compete.
They were getting paid to do that, right, Kevin? That was a big deal.
Yeah. And it was a big deal because the salaries wasn't high. And then what happened is everybody's salaries become so high that it became dangerous in terms of the risk to be in an All-Star game and play hard.
Right.
The other problem I could see, Ek, is that the NHL went to NBC and said, hey, look, we know you've missed some games. We're going to give you this 3-on-3. You could use your advertising for that. They'd be like, no.
I don't want a 3-on-3 competition. Like I want the, I get it that we see these guys take shootouts now. We see them.
Who's going to advertise on it? I don't think anybody would want to advertise.
I don't think it has to be advertised. This could be streamed on the NHL Network. I'm just talking about what we could give to fans that fans would enjoy. I think fans would not enjoy it. I really think that fans would enjoy it.
And I can tell you the reaction of probably most fans. They would probably say, "Wake me up when a game is going."
Right.
Well, yeah. Pretty bad thing to say, because right now we're stuck in this world where we're stuck in this world where we are. Like, we are where we are. There's no precedent for what we're going through right now. So, like, to sit back and to say, like, I would love something new with these players. Like, I don't want to hear Chara talk about, how much his goalie farts. Like, that's not what I want to hear.
We're hockey junkies, Ak.
I know, but we're not the only hockey junkies, or else Hockey Buzz will be out of business. We're not out of business yet. Like, people are still coming, and
don't say that either.
Yeah, I think what Mike's saying, and I agree with him on this, is that the concept, just doesn't work for us anymore because it's too dated. It's a dated concept. But you're saying yourself that people are very interested in what you're doing, the all-time teams in the competition.
Yeah.
That's a unique thing. We're starved for competition. You're providing something that, to me, sort of works. But I think having a 3-on-3 tournament or a showdown, which just it really isn't real competition. You'd wonder how much these players would be into it. And I think would there always be some people that would be interested? Of course,
sure,
because it's but would the vast majority of people be interested? I kind of think not. I know we're all starved. Like, I'm watching reruns of the PBA. Because I just want
you've hit rock bottom. That's rock
bottom.
I
can watch that Game 7 where Boston comes back on Toronto 100 times. I'm tired of it on the NHL Network. Like,
but I think people do like watching some of these older games. I like, to me, the only ones that I won't watch are the ones that have happened in recent history, because I say, we just saw that. Like 5 years ago, we just saw it.
Right.
Yeah, they're not taking advantage of this enough. Like,
they're not taking advantage of
the Rendezvous series. Where's like the Rendezvous 1987 series? Like, there has to be things that they need to get out there that are really unbelievable. Like, I want to watch the series I want to watch. I'll tell you what I want to watch. Since you asked, I want to watch the Blackhawks LA Kings series. Remember that series in like it was the year
2014?
Yeah, the 2014. I mean, no, it was recent history, but remember that 7-game series that those two teams had that was just unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it was a great series, but that's too soon for me.
It's too soon.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of a game that I would like to see again. And they used to every New Year's Eve they used to run this game on CBC. And it was because of its historic significance. They would show that 1975 game New Year's Eve between the Russians and the Montreal Canadiens, with Tretiak standing on his head, and Ken Dryden letting in, I think, 3 goals on 12 shots. But it was an unbelievable game, and it was Cornway and Lemaire and Lafleur and Robinson. It was a great game, and I'd rather see that. I'd rather see go back and play the 72 games of the Russians against Team Canada.
Yeah, let's see those.
Yeah, the summit.
There must be reasons they're not playing them, don't you think?
I don't know, but I'm going to say
that kind of like licensing things that the NHL doesn't completely own.
No, but they have rights to some stuff. Here's something that I think they could do, and I think it would be interesting. I think if they put a little production in, like let's say we were going to talk about the 50 Stanley Cup, right? And they have a guy come in at the beginning and build up the story like, hey, Rangers versus the Red Wings. The Rangers didn't get to play at home because of the circus. So now they're playing their home games in Toronto. You talk about a few things that are going on in 1950. You say it's Gordie Howe versus Chuck Rayner or whoever the Rangers goalie was. And then you start showing – you don't even have to show the full game. You could show a
condensed version of the game, but also have cut in with like
cut in with the guy giving you information.
Yeah, guys, like because everybody's out, everybody's home. Like there's no reason the NHL isn't zooming people like left and right. There is no reason that you like there's no reason you can't zoom people.
But just showing the game on its own sometimes isn't enough.
I mean, I will send the NHL Network.
Yeah, there you go. Your DVD
set that I have of it is Game 8, and it has a 2-hour documentary where Bobby Clark is laughing that he broke Harlamov's ankle. I mean, I don't have a VCR anymore, so I'll send it to them. They can convert it and put it on. There you go.
Something else people don't know. You might not know this in the US. You probably would. Is for Kevin and Mike who had access to the CBC.
Yeah, I didn't have access.
But because we had the big 12-foot satellite dish, I watched this series. Was the miniseries Ken Dryden put out called The Game. The famous book he did, but he also did he did a television miniseries on the CBC. That was phenomenal. Like that was just ridiculous.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Show the Summit Series movie. I reviewed that.
I want to see things like that. Yeah,
really good.
Was there satellite in the 1972?
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
Oh my God!
The satellite that I had was, I had the big, the big one there. You got
the massive dishes. Took
it moved. It was like 12 feet big. It went.
Yeah. I didn't even know that existed.
I bought it from NASA.
It wasn't 72 that the game came out in. I'm going to say it was around 1983 or something like that. Around that era. So before we go, I'm running out of time. I wanted to do the question and answer with Kevin Allen here. So because we've had every famous person we've had on here. Answer these questions, and you're the most famous person I know. So here we go. This is the city. So Kevin, this is what kind of hockey person are you? Okay. The city you grew up in.
Wayne, Michigan.
Wayne, Michigan. The NHL player who was born closest to the city you grew up in. That you can think of.
Mike Modano was born in Westland, Michigan, and has an arena there. So I would say Mike Modano.
Yeah, I remember you driving me past where that arena was.
It was, yeah.
Your favorite NHL team as a kid?
Actually, I need to amend that. It was Jeff Mitchell was actually born in Wayne, who played for the Dallas.
There you go.
Start.
Well, there you go. Interesting. Your favorite team as a kid?
Red Wings.
And your least favorite team as a kid?
Flyers.
I never knew that.
Hated the Flyers.
That's fascinating. How did I not know that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was,
That's pretty awesome.
Well, before that, it was, the Canadians. Because the original, I was original 6, but once we had the original 12, the Flyers were so dominant, and I watched the Flyers just get beat up, and I mean, if you were a fan in the early 70s of the NHL, unless you lived in Philadelphia, you had to despise them.
Absolutely, I despised them.
Oh, everybody.
I'm sure that makes total sense.
God hated the Flyers.
Your favorite hockey writer growing up?
Pardon me?
Your favorite hockey writer as a kid that you'd read?
I would say, boy, that's a tough one because there were a lot of good ones. I'd say when Joe Falls wrote hockey, I loved reading his stuff because he was the Detroit columnist and he really knew the game. But my knowledge from reading magazine articles and stuff, I probably read Stan Fischler.
Yeah.
He was in all the big magazines, and I always went out of my way to get that. We were close to. I'll tell you a story about that. When you go to games at Olympia, there would be a line. Like when you got inside the door, you had to make a beeline for the souvenir stand because they sold the hockey news.
Yep.
And you had to be somewhere because each stand only had about 30 copies. Yep. So you had to be in the top 30 to get a hockey news because that's the only way you could follow the NHL. You didn't get much news. Even in Detroit, we didn't get much news of what was happening around the league. Even when I got my first job in Arizona in 1979, I had access, obviously, to Associated Press.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had to have my girlfriend at the time, who was still living in Michigan, send me kind of articles on what was happening because you couldn't even follow it through the Associated Press.
Yeah.
Something, isn't it?
Like that.
30 copies in Detroit and Philly. It was like 5. Like we were 5 copies of hockey news. Yeah. It was just insane.
And it's sold out, an hour before game.
Yeah. In the 90s, when I was living in Virginia, I had to get the New York Times sent to me, and it was days behind, and that was the only way I could follow it.
Well, we were lucky because the hockey news in the U.S. were printed in Buffalo. They were printed in Toronto and Canada, but I think they had to outsource their printing. It was printed in Buffalo, so we could get them all the time.
Wow.
At least you had one advantage of living in Buffalo.
All right, so how about this? Your favorite hockey. This is tough. I know this is tough to do, but your favorite hockey writer currently.
From a right perspective, from an informational perspective.
Just if you had to,
each.
You could read give each. That's fine, or either one.
I would say from an informational perspective, I think it's Pierre LeBrun, who I know and like a lot, and I know, just from being in the game for long, I know who his sources are. So when I read something, I know where it came from. I can judge exactly where it is. So I say Pierre is my go-to guy.
Yeah.
Bob McKenzie too, but Bob's not really a writer, but he does. But Bob McKenzie, is so wired in. And then from the writing standpoint, I've always been a big Scott Burnside fan.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since he started, I like
he's terrific.
His style of writing. I think Mike Russo in Minnesota is a terrific writer as well.
Yes.
So I would say from the beat perspective, I would say Russo, and from the national perspective, I'm kind of a Burnside guy.
I mean, do you have a favorite prospect guy, Kev? Is that possible?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to say Russ Cohen.
There you go. Thank you.
I totally agree. How about for hockey rumors? Let's move on to the best hockey player, the best hockey player of all time.
Yeah, that's always a hard one because I don't think there's really a great answer for that. But I'm from Detroit, so I'm going to say Gordie Howe. But
there you go.
The way I break it down is Gordie was the best all-around player. Mario Lemieux was the best goal scorer. Bobby Orr was the most dynamic player. And Wayne Gretzky was the most creative player. That's how I break it down. And people say it's a cop-out, but that's how I really
I think that's totally fair. Is there a player you idolized as a kid?
But you criticize me for Bobby Orr.
I'm not going to criticize Kevin Allen. I'm going to criticize.
Yeah. As a kid, who did I idolize? Yeah, believe it or not, though, guys I really liked, Nick Libet on the Red Wings.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
Nick Libet, there's a famous photo he was on the front page of the Sports, the Detroit Free Press, on Gordie Howe Day in Michigan. He fought Keith Magnuson. And Nick really wasn't a fighter, but this was
Magnuson was a good fighter.
Yeah, Magnuson was
I thought he was a good fighter.
No, Magnuson was a frequent fighter who really wasn't all that skilled at it. Like Magnuson lost a lot of fights.
He was good at getting beat up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that. I mean, he was, but he was not like you always had a fighting chance against Magnuson. For whatever reason.
That's fair.
So anyway, Nick Libet was the guy that I always liked. He was just probably a typical NHL player at the time, and I don't know why I like him. And another guy was Paul Woods, who was now the radio guy. But I loved Paul Woods. He came over in a trade. He was fast and furious before it was fashionable. So
they were both hustlers, Kev.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, how about this? All right, so the most famous hockey person. This is a tough one for you because you've met everybody, but the most famous hockey person you've ever met.
Well, I mean, you've met Howe, you met Gretzky.
I mean, you've written the book.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I knew them all.
Yeah,
all the top players. But the one interview that really stands out is I interviewed Rocket Richard one-on-one.
Wow.
Prior to the forum closing.
Oh wow, that's great.
And it also is the only player. This is a true story that I've ever asked for an autograph from.
Really?
We were all done. We had talked, and we had a good time.
Yeah.
And I said that to him. I said, I've never asked an athlete for an autograph. It's just not something that I do. It's not very professional. And I said, and I laughed, and I said, but I would like to do it with you. And he said, I'd be happy to do it. And he signed this, a program from the game that happened to be sitting there that he just picked up and grabbed and signed and gave it to me. So
that's
great. But
that's a great answer, and he's kind of legendary in a totally other level way too. That's a really good one. Your earliest hockey memory?
My earliest hockey memory.
So early that he can't remember.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think, but I remember going to the game at Olympia. It would have been like 65, 64.
Okay.
And I love the way that in the program they had like photos of every player, and the whole roster was on one page, and you had these little
things.
And what I cut them all out, and I made my own hockey cards.
Nice.
With them.
Great one. I love that.
With all that, and I put them all on. And so, I had all the Red Wing, players at that point. That was about 60, 64. It would have been 64.
Pretty early. That's pretty early. Your worst hockey memory?
Early in my career, I was in Hartford covering a game, and I had did a story, and it was Ron Francis and Dave Tippett. And after I was done with the story, I had sent it in, and we were a satellite uplinked, and you had zero time to write a story. You were writing your first story,
right?
Before the game was over, and then you had 40 minutes to write a write through and get quotes, and it was just a crazy existence. And I had the feeling when I was done, even though I read it when I was done, that I did something wrong. And when I went back to the hotel, which was right in that mall there, I went to bed, and at 3:00 in the morning, I sat up straight up in bed and said, shoot. I called Dave Tippett, Ron Tippett, because Ron scored the goal. And I kept thinking about while I was asleep. And I that's exactly what I did. I opened up my Radio Shack computer and picked it up. And there it was. I had done that in my mind. I thought it was fascinating. Even while I was sleeping, my mind was searching for what I had done.
Still looking for that.
And it was a Ron Francis goal that was created by Dave Tippett. And I wrote that Ron Francis was set up by Ron Tippett. So
there you go. That's true, man.
Yeah.
Every week, Kevin. I don't
At least it wasn't Dave Francis.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I felt so horrible about that. And today, that's one of my criticisms of today's journalism is that people don't feel bad about mistakes.
No, it's true.
They don't. They just move on. It's just
it's so fascinating.
I felt ridiculous about that. So
the favorite game you ever personally attended?
Yeah, I got a lot of them, but this was so early in my career. Was Game 7 in Edmonton? Oilers over Ron Hextall and the Flyers, and it was the speed of that game that I will remember. On that big goal that was Anderson and Messier and Nielsen flying up the ice, like I remember that those players were all at about Mach 4 when they hit the blue line. Like it was like F-15 thundering across the ice as they flew up. And the way the press box is, the catwalk, you're really looking down on it, so you had a tremendous perspective. Yeah, wow. And that was in my second season, and it was an incredible game. The Flyers had rallied from a 3-1 deficit. Hextall was at his best. I loved Hextall. It's funny because once I started covering the NHL and the whole league, I became a sort of a Flyers. I wouldn't say I was a fan, but I loved covering them because, first of all, Philadelphia was close to where I lived in Washington, D.C. Right. But they had such a great dressing room. Like Talk was a great speaker. Treated me really well, gave me great quotes, and he was always great copy. And they were always doing something outrageous.
They were. That was a fun team. It was a fun team to grow up with.
Yeah, it was great.
Your hockey position when you played hockey?
Mostly left out. I wasn't very good.
That's okay.
I was a non-scoring winger.
There we go. Your hockey number?
9. Everybody wore 9 in Michigan.
Makes sense. I don't have to ask why. That's the next question. I'm not going to ask why. I understand that. The highest level or most competitive hockey game you ever played in?
I really never played in a competitive hockey game. No, I shouldn't say that.
It's a media game.
I have played in a media game, and I played on a line. Actually, it was a competitive media game in Detroit, and they were only looking for really good players. And they had because they were playing against the Canadian media, and they wanted to do well. And Tom Anastas, who was drafted by the Canadians, who had been a star at Michigan State, owned the Michigan hockey magazine, and he also his assistant publisher was a guy named Lyle Fair, who played in the NHL, and I wrote for that publication on a freelance basis.
Okay.
I knew those guys really, really well. And they had recruited Tom because he was an ex-pro player, and Lyle Fair, who played in the NHL. And so Tom would call me. He said, "Hey, you're probably playing," because I was playing in an over 40 league then. And that would be my most competitive game. I played in an over 40 league. And the way they did that league is they had 3 tiers. It was like tennis. So you had a number 1 line that only played against number 1 lines. Oh, 2 lines that played, and it was a terrific league because
of a great concept. Yeah, it's a great
I was the 4th line, so I only played against 4th line players. So I always had fun.
But I would hear stories of these legendary media games early on with Morgani and Bob McKenzie playing in them and different things like this. And I would hear that
those guys could really play. McKenzie.
I would hear they were pretty intense. Like I would hear these games were pretty darn intense.
Well, anyway, so the story goes is that Tom said, "Well, hey, I'll put you on a line. You can play with Lyle and I. You can center it." And I said, "Yeah, well, it'll be the donut line, and I'll be the line." But anyway, he said, "No." And I said, "No, I'm actually not playing. They really don't want me." He said, "What do you mean they don't want you?" I said, "Yeah, it was pretty clear when I talked to them that they're looking for more competitive guys. That's all Tom wanted to hear." So he called up and he said, "If they want Anastas and Fair, they got to take Allen."
Oh.
He said, "I told them we were a line and we had to play together." So he goes, "And you're going to score on your first shift." I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." So we started the media game, and Tom put me at center. Of course, I lost the draw. But then Lyle Fair went and got the puck out of the corner. And I swear to you, the shift lasted 2 minutes. Tom told me just to go to the front of the net. And he and Lyle worked like wild men, constantly grab the puck. And then they'd shovel it toward the net. And then I would jam at it. And after about 2 minutes on the ice, I finally did jam one in. But we controlled the puck. I shouldn't say we. Tom for a good 2 minutes until they got the puck on. Somebody got it on net, and then I just tapped it.
Fantastic! I love it.
Yeah.
Last question. One NHL rule that simply must be changed.
I don't like the fact that you can ice the puck. Never have liked that rule when you're shorthanded.
Right.
So I've always wanted that to change, and I think it would create more offense, and I'm all in favor.
I like that a lot. All right. Well, thank you, Kev. Thanks for staying a little bit longer today. Really appreciate it. Then thanks for playing our game.
Yeah.
Hockey Person Review. Guys, remember, you can go to patreon.com/hockey and support the show. We'd really appreciate it. It would help us out a ton right now. It would, enable us to go get more toilet paper when we need it. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. So we will talk to you on Monday.